Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of May, 2019. And tonight's topic, Russia piles on another 500,000 ounces of gold to reserves in April. Russia continues to stack gold. We're going to show you a bunch of really nice charts and talk about all of the comparisons of what Russia's doing to China, Russia's doing to India compared to India. You'll get a real understanding of how much gold Russia really is adding to reserves, far and away the most of any central bank the past few years, dwarfing even second place China and third place Kazakhstan. Well, welcome Smaulgld mug stackers and game changers. So let's get into the Russian story. And by the way, I just want to put a marker down. I believe that either this week and or next week, we will start to see the declassification of many documents. Now, why do I say that? Well, I think that the narrative is about to change because they're really pushing this impeachment thing, but the Democrats are. There's no reason now not to start putting together a sequencing of released documents, declassified documents. And I think that's going to happen. And the reason I think it's going to happen, not just because of the need for a change in the narrative, but I recall the last time that Rush Limbaugh, and I believe that he coordinates messages with Donald Trump, when the Mueller report was going to come out. We didn't know that, but Rush Limbaugh went and played golf with Donald Trump. And then we found that out afterwards. And I believe that when there's these big type of data dumps or Mueller report or declassification of documents, I think that Rush Limbaugh speaks with Donald Trump. Now, Rush Limbaugh could be on vacation. The reason I mention this is his show, he had a sit-in for his show during that couple of days before the Mueller report came out. And he's had the same this week. So I'm suggesting that as last time, when he took off from his show, as later revealed, he'd been golfing with President Trump. And the days he took off coincided with the release of the Mueller report. And then, what he says tends to find its way and work its way through Fox News, Hannity, all of those guys. It's the type of talking point that he sets up. And since he's off this week, and again, he could be on vacation, but he could also be on vacation and meeting with Trump, I think some of the documents will be declassified. Now, we're going into a Memorial Day weekend, so there may be a teaser drop this before then. But if not, or even if, then I think next week we'll see some documents. So enough on that. Let's get into Russia and what they're doing with the gold. Central Bank of Russia, the Federation of the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia, added another 500,000 ounces of gold to reserves in April, and they added 500,000 ounces in March. That brings them to 2,183.46 tons, a sizable amount, but keep in mind that's worth $90 billion, which is a sizable amount, but in the grand scheme of things, $90 billion is a half a month of QE. It's not the biggest amount, but as far as gold hoards go, it certainly is. Now let's see some more charts on, let's see where Russia is in the league table, so to speak. The gold reserves by central bank, the top 10. You can see that Russia is knocking on, looks like fourth and third place. Third place, Italy, 2,450 tons. Fourth place, France, 2,435 tons. And fifth place, Russia, 2,183 tons. Putting them 252 tons away, or approximately, I would say, 12 months away at the current pace. It wouldn't happen this year, but it would happen about this time next year. They would bust down France's door and sometime in 2020 pass Italy. and then only put themselves in third place, looking at Germany and the United States as the only two central banks that would have more gold than they would have. Now, historically, here's what Russia's been doing. You can see since 2014 a concerted effort to really ramp up the gold additions to their reserves. This year, I might add, they're a little further behind than the past few years. So if you're looking at the first 4 months, they've averaged about 17 tons a month. That will take them to about 200, 204, which is less than last year's torrid pace at 270 when they finished with 270, 71. And in 2018, they had about 224 tons. But 2015 and 16 were approximately 200 tons a year. This year, most likely they'll do at least 200 tons. And they could surprise a lot of years, as we'll see. I'll show you a monthly chart. They could surprise with an occasional 1 million or 1.2, 1.3 million ounce addition. Now, they did that last year, and that's, in a way, you can see that they didn't add much in March last year. April, they added about 750, but you can see in August of 2018, they added 1 million ounces. September, 1.2 million. And then in November, another 1.2 million. This year, there's only been 1 million ounce addition month, and that was February. Very low in January. Started the year off pretty low. And then only the last 2 months, as you can see to the far right of your screen there, or the chart, 500,000 each month. But there, you can see also that there are these spikes. So you really can't just average the first 4 months and suggest that maybe we're behind schedule. But even at this schedule, at this rate, it's still over 200 tons projected for the Central Bank of Russia to add. Now, where do they get all the gold? We've talked about this before a lot. They are the world's third largest gold mining country, and they're putting a lot of money, some of it co-invested with China, into their domestic mining production. And the last 2 years, they have mined amounts that they've put in 86% of the total mined production. So in 2018, they mined approximately 314 tons, and they loaded 271 of those tons into the Central Bank of Russia's balance sheet. And then in 2017, same thing, 86% of the 260 tons they put that they mined, they put 224 tons into the gold reserves. And if you look at the chart, that is a newer trend where as far back as early as 2012, only 33% of their gold, and in 2013, only 31% of their gold mined ended up on the balance sheet, and they're putting more on. Now, more on, that says more on. If you consider if Russia would want to add more than 270 tons, then they're going to go past their mining production, because not every year can they mine 300 tons of gold. And some of the gold they've already agreed to ship to India and China. They agreed to that last year to send some to India, and they have agreements where they actually have co-mining deals with China, so China gets some of that gold as well. That may mean at one point, or at some point, Russia may have to import gold. China has the world's leading gold production, but they still import gold. Russia doesn't have to import gold because they deem sufficient. 270 tons was the biggest year. That still was enough that they didn't need to import any gold. So we'll see where that goes if they start importing. One of the reasons I say this doesn't have the big impact on the gold market is because they're just holding on to a greater amount of their domestic supply. They are a large gold producer, but on the margins, you're talking about maybe taking 50, 60 tons, 80 tons of gold off the market that might have otherwise gone into the general 4,000 tons of gold that are mined each year. It just stays in Russia. And China's been doing that for years too. Whatever gold production they have stays in China. So now you're looking at Australia to pick up the slack because they're the second world's largest gold mining country. And, South Africa is no longer even in the top 10. They've depleted many of their mines, and they also have a lot of issues with financing down there as well. Let's see what else we can show you on Russia's. Yeah, let's take a look at what Russia's doing versus China. Keep in mind that the People's Bank of China added gold and was adding gold every month from June 2015. Well, let me just show you another one. That's the current one. Let me show you the older one. No, I don't have that one. That's right. We'll show you this one. From 2015 until October 2016. And they were adding a healthy amount, and then they stopped. Now, a lot of people say, oh, they're lying, they're hiding, Sun Tzu. No, it's got nothing to do with Sun Tzu or hiding or lying. China was selling off significant portions of their foreign reserves during that time period. They at one point had $4 trillion in reserves. They sold down $1 trillion. So they just weren't adding gold. And there is a lot of gold in China. It's a tired old story, but there is plenty of gold in China. We know there's a lot of imports of gold into China. We know there's a lot of gold mining production into China. We're simply talking about the People's Bank of China and what they have. So they stopped adding gold to the reserves in October 2016, and they just started adding again, and they're building back their reserves in December of 2018. So on the chart there, you can see China added about almost 10 tons of gold to reserves. Then 11 tons in January, 9 tons in February again, 11 tons in March. And this past month, doesn't show on the chart there, but 14.93. So almost 15 tons of gold China added in April of this year. Now, Russia is just on that continual addition of gold each and every month. And so far this year, just like during the period of time of 2015 to 2016, when the two of them were adding gold, Russia is out producing or out adding or out accumulating or more gold than China, as you can see on the chart there. Put it into perspective, how much gold now that we know. By the way, since the Central Bank of, or the People's Bank of China, it's got a much larger reserve position. So while Russia may have more gold than China, the Central Bank of Russia may have more gold than the People's Bank of China. The People's Bank of China's foreign reserves are well over $3 trillion. The Russian foreign reserves are far less. They're about $500 billion. This hasn't been updated, but if you add in through April, this is only through March, it's at $491 billion. So Russia has $491 billion in foreign reserves. China has about $3.1 trillion. Yet, Russia, as we've seen, has more gold. The People's Bank, the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia has more gold than the People's Bank of China. And the gold that Russia has, those 2,183 tons are worth about $90 billion, but they represent about 18.5% of Russia's overall foreign reserves of about $491 billion, whereas China's 1,900 tons, less than Russia's, gold reserves represent about 2%, a little less than 2% of the overall foreign reserves of China. So it's a big difference, the amount of gold Russia has relative to the size of its reserves. Now, even though the Russian hoard is massive, it's still worth, as I mentioned, only $90 billion. It's really the Chinese private demand, or could be other governmental demand, but gold that goes into China or stays in China and gets purchased in the form of bullion, jewelry, is much higher than what ends up on the People's Bank of China's balance sheet. It's the same thing. The gold that goes into into India through imports, and they have very little gold mining, so they're reliant on imports. You could see it dwarfs what Russia adds every year. And then there was the World Gold Council came out, I think it was today or yesterday, was talking about, there's always these estimates that they say there's about 24,000 tons of gold in Indians' hands, and it represents like 40% of India's GDP. So India, in general, is just a massive gold hoarder. But remember, look at the Central Bank of India. The Central Bank of India doesn't have that much gold. It's got 607 tons. I think maybe it's up to 630 now. I may have to update that chart. I've updated Russia and China. But it's really the gold in India is with the temples, but mostly in the hands of citizens. And most of that's not in bullion form. It's in the form of high quality, high carat, 22, 24 carat bangles and necklaces and other types of adornment that Indians might wear. But you can see last year they imported 718 tons, which is far more than the 272 tons that Russia added to her reserves. And you can see certain years they can bring in almost 1,000 tons, or almost a quarter of the world's mining production. Now remember, if China and Russia, up until recently, weren't sending any of their gold to India, well then India, even though it's about almost a quarter of global production, a good portion of global production is out of commission in China and Russia because it's not going to end up with India. All right, what else do we have on Russians? Well, here's an interesting chart. It's no longer that relevant because Russia's pretty much got rid of almost all of their U.S. Treasury holdings. But for a while, they used to have, even though they were adding a lot of gold, nominal dollar amounts of treasuries in reserves more than they had gold. And you can see the dollar amount. At one point, just June 2017, they had $108 billion worth of treasuries. And even now, with their gold hoard, it's still only at 90 billion. So it's hard to really accumulate much more gold than Russia is accumulating. And you've seen that these central bank gold accumulation schemes have not pushed the price of gold higher. The price of gold has been pretty much flat the past few years, even though you've got the central banks are buying gold, but really it's about 10-12%, and most of it's Russian, and it's not really impacting the supply-demand dynamic very much at all. All right, well, I think that's all we have on Russia. Let's see what you guys are saying in the comments. And let's see where you're hearing dead air. Not Grateful Dead air, just dead air, because I'm going to pull up the Smaulgld fundraisers. I want to thank people who have been donating to Smaulgld via Subscribestar and our Smaulgld patrons and our Smaulgld one-offs on Bitcoin and Litecoin, and those who donate via PayPal. So I do want to, and those who send me items of value in the mail. So I want to thank you very much for all of that. And then tomorrow is, I guess it's already Thursday, so we'll get back to the general news tomorrow. All right, well, let's see what we have. We got a lot of crypto stories to go through, some more gold and silver stories, but we're going to leave this one at Russia and get to your comments. All right. Phil McCain is here. Pablo's asking if this is a game changer. Anton, yes, Max is here. Chuck and Plata. Lewis at Silver Doctors, an article stated that at a gold price, 2,000, they could back the ruble. But I don't know if that's complete or near coverage. Could you shine the insight of this? There's no point in any... Depends on what you call a gold... What does gold backing mean? If the price were to double from here, their gold hoard, which is worth 90 billion right now, would be worth about 150 billion. Their foreign reserves are 490 billion. So that would just mean that instead of having 18% of their foreign reserves in gold, it would mean they'd have about 35, maybe 32%. Just doing it off the top of my head. But I don't know what backing means, because Kazakhstan's foreign reserves, half of them are gold. There's many countries that have high percentages of their reserves in gold. If you mean if you mean backing by, if you have a ruble that you can then bring your ruble to the Russian Treasury and get gold for it, that would be completely idiotic, because they'd be out of gold in no time. No one would hold the ruble. Remember, that was the problem the United States had. The United States had the problem with the Bretton Woods Agreement, whereby foreign central banks that were signatories to the Bretton Woods Agreements of 1944 could bring their dollars to the Treasury and get gold in exchange for those dollars at the then current rate, fixed rate of $35 an ounce. Even with the dollar and every country agreeing that the dollar should be the world's reserve currency and that it should be backed by gold and redeemable by gold, the countries didn't trust it. And so they just said, okay, well, if we can get the gold and we have the dollars, we're going to come and get it. And Nixon said, well, we're going to run out of gold, so go away. And he, quote, temporarily suspended the exchange of dollars for gold. So this idea that somehow some country is going to back their currency with gold, there's no incentive to do that. It doesn't make any sense to do it. And I don't know why people say that they think the price of gold is going to skyrocket. It's not going to happen. Because first of all, a gold standard that's agreed upon by the world requires a fixed price. So you can't, quote, protect yourself anymore. How could, if you had gold in the 60s, the price was stuck at $35 an ounce, because that's where all the countries in the world fixed it. So all that inflation that was going on, you couldn't get. You weren't even allowed to own gold because of that. From 1934 to 1974, Americans couldn't even own gold. So I don't know why gold pumpers push the idea of gold back yuan, game changer, and Russian back. First of all, they're not going to do it. It makes no sense for them to do it. And I don't see how it would be good for them. I don't see how it would be good for anyone else. But such is the mindset, I guess. Okay, now, Phil was making a point. If the ruble is weak, how do they buy when the miners could sell for dollars, euros, etc.? So, first of all, the point is that the ruble is weak, even though Russia has increased its gold reserves. But countries don't look at... Kazakhstan has a horrific currency, and they got half of their reserves in gold. So gold, adding gold to reserves doesn't increase the value of a currency. Canada has an okay currency, but it has no gold on its balance sheet at all. Same with Australia, it's very little. And both countries have a lot of gold resources. Actually, Canada doesn't have that much. Australia does. But gold doesn't really impact the value of a currency. So if the ruble is weak, how do they buy when the miners could sell for dollars? Now, that I don't know. We don't know, like Kazakhstan, what they do, whether they convert their domestic miners at the price, or whether the miners sell it at a special price to the government. That I don't know. But it still makes sense, even if they had to pay market price for it, because in their minds, in most people's minds, you are, especially with Russia, if you're not going to hold dollars, the next best thing, or even a better thing to hold, is gold. So even if you pay the full freight, the spot price of gold, it's going to hold its value better than the ruble is. And so you might as well swap those rubles, even if they're undervalued rubles, into gold, because the gold, once they've been exchanged for rubles, is going to hold its value better. Same with the Kazakhstan. Ruble is strong like bear. No, ruble not strong. Ruble's a very weak currency. My trained monkeys say ruble is strong, says Chuck DePlata. Yeah, and Phil, tossing Malta, Phil McKinney, the answer is the power of the gun. The state controls the guns, the same reason you volunteer to pay tax. Okay, now Chuck and Plata says, I've seen videos showing Russia storing a lot of silver also. That's somewhat of a pumper story too. Remember, any country can stack natural resources. And every country should stack natural resource, whether it's oil or silver or copper. The key difference is when Russia is holding on to silver, it's not for monetary purposes. It's not held on their balance sheet. It's not reported on their balance sheet. They have it for strategic reasons. Silver is a strategic metal. There's many strategic metals. There's rare earth metals. There's silver. There's copper. There's rhodium. There's many strategic metals, and they'll store those. The difference is that gold is stored for monetary reasons. That's why there's a premium on gold. I don't want to get into this whole why the gold-silver ratio is high. It's because gold has a monetary component given to it and continue to have by central banks. Silver, no central bank holds silver on its balance sheet. Doesn't list it as an asset. No, it's a commodity. So any silver that Russia has, even if the central bank thinks it might be good to have, that I don't see it. I look at all the stuff that they put out, their entire balance sheet that they put out, all their financials. They don't list silver anywhere. And you can't say, oh, it's because they're lying and they know that silver is going to go high. No, they don't. See, that's just hopium. That's just when people want to get all excited about silver, so they make up stories. JP Morgan is buying silver eagles. No, they're not. They never did. These are just stories that people float out there. COMEX, default, gold, vacuum. I don't need to name them all, but that's just what happened. All right. Does anyone know if Indian ever did interest? Yes. On gold deposit scheme. Yes, they had a couple of schemes. They're still ongoing. One scheme is turn your gold in and they give you a bond and it pays interest. Another one is that they're trying to get you to do is put all your gold online and digitize it. So then the government knows what you have. But so far, they don't have much luck with any of that stuff. All right, let's see. Nick Carducci, can I make you a sitemap? I don't know what you mean. Sick chart. Hello, everyone. Coins AZ. Pablo says, good point. I don't know what the point was about. All right, Coins AZ. It's not enough for a country to stock gold. They need to have enough military might and friends to protect it. Look what happened to Libya. I'm convinced their gold reserves were raided. Well, that happens. Countries invade other countries. It's as old as, you go back to the Roman times. The Vikings used to get, I'm not saying the Romans, the Vikings, the same time period, but the Vikings used to get tributes, so they would stop attacking, and they would take their silver and head north and leave the French alone and whoever they were raiding. That happens all the time. All right, well, if we don't have any more comments or questions, or if you want to stack your own gold or silver, you can do so through the links below this BitChute and YouTube, and Smaulgld gets a small commission if you do that. It's not investment advice to buy gold or silver, but if you're going to do so and you've done your research, please consider buying through the Smaulgld links from SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, Golden Eagle Coin. Visit those sites. You pay no more, no less than if you visit them on your own. So if you click on the affiliate links on smaulgld.com or below this video, you'll be taken directly to the site, and I will get a small commission. It is a way of helping the site out because we do not have YouTube ads. We don't have to worry about clicking off ads, and we also support the channel through your generous donations. So I'm going to turn it over to Bernie, unless we have... And also, yes, Pablo says stack mugs. Of course, you can always buy your Smaulgld mugs at the links below or at smaulgld.com. Mugs can never go to zero. Mugged back yuan, mugged back ruble. I hear JP Morgan is buying mugs. All right, so here's Bernie.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the 10-second countdown, and then we're going to say goodnight. So first, send the money to Lewis, because Lewis is not part of the 1%. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a good night.